Hi everyone, I'm going to explain a soil erosion by water experiment, and my name is Safa Khan. First, I will go over an introduction to water erosion, the erosion experiment, the science behind erosion, and finally, the importance to our society. Water is essential to life on Earth. Yet, water is one of the most destructive molecules on Earth as well. Rivers are formed by water. Rivers cut across the land, often creating canyons. One of the most striking examples of this is the Grand Canyon, which was formed by the Colorado River eroding away the land. Rain also has the power to erode away soil. Farming techniques and irrigation can also erode away the land. When water erodes away the land is swept away to faraway places. And what is left is soil that is not as rich in nutrients. Now I'm going to go ahead and walk you through the experiment. First, you would need to gather your materials. You will need soil and loaf pans. You could either buy small potted plants or seeds so that you can grow a plant example. You will also collect some topsoil materials such as rocks, leaves, and bark. You will also need a big container to collect the runoff water. That could be a large foil pan or a kitty litter box. Finally, you will need a watering bucket or some kind of container that you will use to water the loaf pans with. Now let's get into the method. You will place a layer of soil in all of the loaf pans. Now you can either grow seeds in the loaf pan and make sure that you have established roots, or you can transplant the plants into the loaf pan. Just pack them in tightly together. In each loaf pan, top the soil with different types of topsoil. Here is an example of an experimental setup. You can have a variety of ways to put topsoil, but you should always have one to compare with no topsoil. That's just soil on the right hand side. Then I have bark, and the next one I have rocks, and finally I have the plant example. Once you have set up all of your loaf pans, predict which pan will have the cleanest water from the runoff. Once you are ready, go ahead and stick your loaf pans propped up on a large container to collect all the runoff water. Go ahead and water your loaf pans. Observe the results. Which loaf pan had the dirtiest water? Which one had the cleanest? From your experiment setup, which pan came in second and third? Why? What made them better in holding in the soil than the losing example? When you are comparing your loaf pans to see which one had the cleanest runoff, think about why that one had the cleanest runoff. And vice versa, when you look at the example that had the most soil in the runoff and the dirtiest runoff, think about why. In my example, the plant version had the cleanest water. Plants are excellent at holding in the soil. If you look at this picture, you can see how the roots are wrapped around the soil. They are literally holding the soil together. Observe the forest floor here. Notice how there are cover plants on the forest floor, as well as bark, leaves, and twigs. They are important for holding in the soil. So, why is soil erosion important to society and to all of us? If you look at this picture of the farmland here, there is nothing to hold in the soil. So if there is a windy day, you could have wind erosion. If it rains, you might expect soil erosion. And so this is something important to keep in mind, because the top layer of soil is where all the nutrients are to grow food. We need to protect our croplands for food production, and improper farming techniques can destroy farmlands. If we don't protect the farmlands, we can find that what will happen is that the areas that were previously fertile will become semi-arid or desert. This happens every year and has been going on for a long time. We actually have records in the cuneiform from the written language from Mesopotamia, our most ancient civilization. And in the cuneiform, it was recorded that every year they would see more soil erosion. So they would say things like the wheat crop did not grow well this year, and the soil was getting a little bit saltier. And then next year they say we're going to grow barley, and finally they could not grow anything. Ultimately, many of the farmlands in ancient Mesopotamia were destroyed, and this was seen across many ancient civilizations all around the world. And we have to be careful that we do not make the same mistakes as our ancient ancestors. Another reason we have to be careful about soil erosion is to protect our waterways and nature. If the soil erodes away, all of that soil can find its way into the waterways. And agriculture lands have a lot of toxins on them, such as manure and pesticides, and those things can find their way into our water. One way to protect our waterways from runoff is to make sure that we have plants and bushes in areas where runoff occurs. This will help hold in the soil. Ultimately, it is up to us to protect nature, our farmlands, and our waterways for ourselves and future generations.